Good evening. I'm Andrew Bing, and I will be the hearing officer and facilitating today's hearing for the Maryland Transportation Authority, abbreviated as MDTA. This is the second of 3 public hearings the MDTA is conducting for the Bay Crossing Study Tier 2 National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or Draft EIS. A virtual hearing was held yesterday on Monday, February 9th, and the final hearing will be held on Thursday, February 12th at Kent Island High School in Stevensville. Before getting started, we would like to acknowledge and thank any elected officials joining us this evening. I will be the hearing officer and am responsible for running today's public hearing. Today's public hearing is being held jointly by the MDTA and the Federal Highway Administration, and on behalf of these agencies, I welcome you. The purpose of this hearing is for interested parties to learn about the Tier 2 Study Draft EIS, alternatives analysis, and environmental impacts, to review the MDTA's recommended preferred alternative, abbreviated as MDTA RPA, and to provide written or verbal testimony. We hope you have had the chance to review the public hearing materials and draft EIS on the project website, or at one of our draft EIS viewing locations, or tonight in the cafeteria where there were some copies. Today I will introduce the MDTA Bay Crossing Study project team members who are joining us as panelists, share a video that reviews and summarizes the public hearing display boards, explain Title VI and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, review the hearing procedures, and identify ways for you to comment on the draft EIS and the MDTA RPA. I will then begin public testimony. Today's public hearing is being audio recorded. Please note that you cannot provide testimony remotely during these in-person sessions. The official transcript of the public hearing testimony will become part of the project record and will be available for public review on the Bay Crossing Study project website. Additionally, the audio recording will be available on the project website. At this time, I'd like to ask the panelists attending tonight's hearing to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening. I'm Melissa Williams. I'm the Director of Planning and Program Development at MDTA.
And I'm Heather Lowe, MDTA Manager of Planning and Community Relations. We would now like to show a pre-recorded video that provides an overview and summary of the public hearing display boards. The video is approximately 20 minutes long, and after it concludes, we will begin the live testimony portion of tonight's hearing. We will start the video now.
Welcome to the Bay Crossing Study Tier 2 NEPA Virtual Public Hearing Display Boards presentation. These display boards provide a summary of the draft environmental impact statement and the MDTA's recommended preferred alternative. A new Bay Bridge is needed to address existing issues within the study limits. For example, the existing bridge does not have enough travel lanes, is a severe bottleneck, requires frequent two-way operations, has narrow lanes and no shoulders, has aging bridge spans, and limits the height of ships navigating to the Port of Baltimore. To address these issues, the MDTA recommends a new, modern Bay Bridge. After evaluating 7 alternatives, the MDTA recommends Alternative C. Alternative C would replace the existing aging spans with 2 new 4-lane spans, adding the needed capacity and removing the bottleneck at the Bay Bridge. Have 4 lanes for travel in each direction, reducing the need for two-way operations and improving the reliability of crossing the bay. Increase the vertical navigational clearance to 230 feet to meet U.S. Coast Guard requirements and enhance port access. Provide full shoulders for maintenance and emergencies, have the least environmental impact and lowest cost, and eliminate the need for extensive maintenance and rehabilitation of the existing spans.
Let's take a look at the Tier 2 study timeline. The Tier 2 study began in 2022. The MDTA has held 3 public open houses and is currently holding public hearings for the draft EIS. The public hearings are a major study milestone and provide the public with a chance to comment on the alternatives, environmental impacts, and the MDTA RPA. Looking ahead, the combined final EIS and record of decision is anticipated in November 2026, followed by design and construction. The purpose of the Tier 2 study is to address existing and future transportation capacity needs and access across the Chesapeake Bay and at the Chesapeake Bay Bridge approaches along the US 5301 corridor. Study needs include adequate capacity and reliable travel times, mobility, roadway deficiencies, existing and future maintenance needs of the existing spans, and navigation. The MDTA is also considering two important objectives for this major infrastructure project: environmental responsibility and financial responsibility. Alternative C is the MDTA RPA because it would be the least costly alternative, ranging from $14.8 to $16.4 billion without an optional shared use path, and from $16.1 to $17.6 billion with an optional shared use path. We will discuss the shared use path in more detail later. Please note that these costs are based on a planning level cost estimate. Alternative C would remove the bottleneck at the Bay Bridge in both directions on non-summer weekdays and in the eastbound direction on summer weekend days. It would have the least impact to environmental resources such as parks, historic properties, wetlands, non-tidal surface waters, and other natural resources, as well as private property. Please note that Alternative C is the MDTA's recommendation. The MDTA and SHWA will identify a selected alternative in the combined final EIS and record of decision following the review of agency and public comments on the draft EIS.
As mentioned, the MDTA evaluated 7 alternatives, including a no-build alternative and 6 build alternatives. Each of the build alternatives would include the construction of 2 new Chesapeake Bay Bridge spans, replacing the existing spans. They differ by the number of lanes on the new bridge and US 5301 approach roadways, as well as location of the new bridge spans, with one span north or south of the existing spans and the other between them. The build alternatives would also include a financial commitment for transit improvements, along with an optional bicycle and pedestrian shared use path. Alternative A, or the no-build alternative, does not meet the study's purpose and need, but serves as a baseline for comparison with the build alternatives. It would retain the current bridge and lane configuration, offers no capacity improvements, and would require extensive maintenance and rehabilitation, leading to increased congestion. The no-build alternative would cost approximately $3.8 billion in today's dollars in maintenance of the Bay Bridge through 2065, including major rehabilitation. In contrast, alternatives B and C propose a 6-8-6 lane configuration. They would have 8 lanes across 2 new spans, 4 in each direction, with 6 lanes on both shores. The transition from 6 to 8 lanes would occur west of Oceanic Drive and east of Cox Creek. Alternative B would build 1 new span just north of the existing spans and 1 between the existing spans. Alternative C would build 1 new span just south of the existing spans and 1 between the existing spans. Both alternatives are 8.3 miles in length and would include modifications to some interchange ramps. Alternatives D and E propose an 8-8-8 lane configuration and would widen US 5301 to 8 lanes throughout the corridor, with 8 lanes across a new 2-span bridge. The transitions from 6 to 8 lanes would occur at the Maryland 2 and Maryland 450 interchange and at the US 5301 split. Alternative D would build 1 new span just north of the existing spans and 1 between the existing spans. Alternative E would build 1 new span just south of the existing spans and 1 between the existing spans. Alternatives F and G propose an 8-10-8 configuration and include 10 lanes across a new 2-span bridge with 8 lanes on US 5301. Similar to alternatives D and E, the transitions from 6 to 8 lanes would occur at the Maryland 2 and Maryland 450 interchange and at the US 5301 split. The transitions from 8 to 10 lanes would occur west of Oceanic Drive and east of Cox Creek. Alternative F would build one new span just north of the existing spans and one between the existing spans. Alternative G would build one new span just south of the existing spans and one between the existing spans. Alternatives D, E, F, and G are 20.4 miles long and would include modifications to all interchange ramps between Maryland 2, Maryland 450, and the US 5301 split, and require widening of the Kent Narrows Bridge.
A shared use path on a new bridge is an option with every build alternative. If included, the shared use path would be a two-way pedestrian and bicycle facility separated from the travel lanes and shoulders by a physical barrier. It would also include a fall protection system. Following publication of the combined final EIS and record of decision, the MDTA will further evaluate whether to include the shared use path based on financial and other considerations. Construction of Alternative C, the MDTA RPA, would be phased to keep traffic flowing and ensure a safe transition to the new Bay Bridge spans. The following is a potential construction sequencing option. Shown are the existing eastbound and westbound Chesapeake Bay Bridge spans. First, a new eastbound span would be built south of the existing bridges and open to traffic. The existing eastbound span would then be removed. Next, a new westbound span would be built between the new eastbound span and the existing westbound span. Finally, the existing westbound span would be removed. Shown are the completed new eastbound and westbound Chesapeake Bay Bridge spans. These renderings present examples of what a potential suspension or cable-stayed bridge could look like from the Sandy Point State Park beach. To meet navigational clearance requirements, the new bridge deck and towers would be higher than the existing spans. The new towers could be 400 to 570 feet high, as compared to the existing 354-foot eastbound and 379-foot westbound towers. Please note that these concepts are for planning purposes only and are subject to change during final design.
Under the no-build alternative, traffic volumes are expected to increase 31% on non-summer weekdays and 25% on summer weekend days, reflecting annual growth rates typical for the region. Under the build alternatives, traffic volumes are expected to be slightly greater than under the no-build alternative. All build alternatives would limit the need for two-way operations, thus improving reliability for traffic crossing the bay. This figure shows the existing and 2045 no-build non-summer weekday traffic bottleneck areas and approximate maximum queue lengths. When traveling westbound, both the Bay Bridge and Baydale Drive would become bottlenecks if a new bridge is not built, leading to longer traffic queues. When traveling eastbound, the existing bottleneck at the Bay Bridge would become more pronounced, and the Maryland 2, Maryland 450 interchange would become a new bottleneck if a new bridge is not built. Here you can see the existing and 2045 no-build summer weekend traffic bottleneck areas and approximate maximum queue lengths. Without a new bridge, summer weekend bottlenecks at the Bay Bridge would become more pronounced. When traveling westbound, queues would extend past the US 5301 split. Because traffic is constrained by the bridge, no queuing is expected further west at Baydale Drive or at the Maryland 2 and Maryland 450 interchange. When traveling eastbound, bottlenecks at the bridge and the Maryland 2 and Maryland 450 interchange would also become more pronounced, resulting in queues beyond the interchange. Because traffic is constrained by the bridge, no queuing is expected further east at the US 5301 split. This figure shows non-summer weekday traffic bottleneck areas and approximate maximum queue lengths for the build alternatives in design year 2045. All build alternatives would remove the bottleneck at the Bay Bridge in both directions, allowing traffic to flow freely across the bridge. When traveling westbound past the bridge, alternatives B and C would see queuing at Baydale Drive, while alternatives D through G shift the bottleneck to the Maryland 2 and Maryland 450 interchange. When traveling eastbound under all the build alternatives, the Maryland 2 and Maryland 450 interchange would be a bottleneck. There would be no queuing at the US 5301 split. Shown here are the summer weekend traffic bottleneck areas and approximate maximum queue lengths for the build alternatives in design year 2045. All of the build alternatives would result in bottlenecks on both shores when traveling in either direction on a summer weekend. When traveling westbound, a bottleneck would exist at Baydale Drive with alternatives B and C, while alternatives D through G shift that bottleneck to the Maryland 2 and Maryland 450 interchange. These bottlenecks would lead to queuing extending beyond the Bay Bridge for all alternatives and beyond the US 5301 split for alternatives B through E. When traveling eastbound, only alternatives D and E would lead to a bottleneck at the Bay Bridge, while the existing bottleneck at the Maryland 2 and Maryland 450 interchange would continue for all build alternatives. The US 5301 split under all build alternatives would be a new bottleneck, with queues extending to the Bay Bridge under alternatives D through G. More detail on the traffic analysis is presented on the boards posted to the website.
We are holding the public hearings and sharing this information so that you are informed and can provide your comments on the study's draft EIS. An EIS is required by the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, and supports decision-making by describing the potential environmental impacts of the proposed project alternatives. The Tier 2 study draft EIS includes the purpose and need, alternatives, existing environmental resources and potential impacts, mitigation measures, and public and agency input used in the development of alternatives and in decision-making. The draft EIS was published in the Federal Register on January 23, 2026, and is available for public review. Comments on the draft EIS will be accepted until March 9, 2026. All comments received on or before this date will be considered in the development of the combined final EIS and record of decision, which is anticipated in November 2026. The draft EIS analyzed potential impacts from the build alternatives to various resources. These include natural, cultural, and socioeconomic resources, public parks and historic sites, air quality, potential noise-sensitive areas, and hazardous materials. This slide shows the estimated environmental impacts of the alternatives. The impacts highlighted in green represent the lowest impact per category by alternative, excluding the no-build alternative, which would not have any impacts related to build alternative activities. As you can see, Alternative C has the least impact to natural, community, and historic resources. Alternative C is also the least expensive, with an estimated cost of $14.8 to $16.4 billion. This cost does not include the optional shared use path, which will be discussed on the next slide. As mentioned earlier, please note that these costs are based on a planning level cost estimate.
Since the shared use path is being advanced independently as an option to the build alternatives, its potential impacts are quantified separately from the build alternative impacts. As you can see, the impacts for the optional shared use path are generally consistent for all build alternatives. The shared use path cost is also generally the same for all build alternatives, with the cost ranging from $1.2 to $1.3 billion. These costs are also based on a planning level cost estimate. Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act requires projects receiving federal funding or federal approvals to consider impacts on historic properties. The MDTA initiated consultation with the Maryland Historical Trust, the State Historic Preservation Officer, federally recognized tribes, local governments, and other interested stakeholders. The MDTA is additionally preparing a programmatic agreement outlining mitigation strategies, protocols for additional archaeological surveys, and procedures for continued consultation during final design. Section 4F of the U.S. Department of Transportation Act of 1966 is a federal law that provides protections to parks, recreation areas, wildlife refuges, and historic sites. Alternative C would have the least impact to parks and historic sites. The Chesapeake Bay, rivers, streams, and wetlands are protected under the Federal Clean Water Act and various Maryland laws and regulations. Impacts to waterways and wetlands from the build alternatives would be associated with roadway grading, pavement, new structures including bridge piers, and in-water dredging. Alternative C would have the least impact to these resources.
The build alternatives could impact species protected by the Federal Endangered Species Act, the Magnuson-Stevens Act, and the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Potential impacts could include interaction with construction equipment, tree clearing, and in-water construction activities such as dredging and pile driving. Based on the preliminary assessment, Alternative C is not likely to adversely affect listed or proposed bat species and is likely to adversely affect listed sturgeon and sea turtle species. Right-of-way acquisition would be required for all the build alternatives. All impacted property owners would be fairly compensated in compliance with the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act. The economic analysis showed that construction of the MDTA RPA could generate up to $23 billion in economic activity, support up to 75,600 jobs, create up to $6 billion in labor income, and increase regional GDP by up to $12.9 billion. A proposed 230-foot high bridge, which matches the proposed new clearance of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, would accommodate larger ships, increasing cargo capacity, revenue, port activity, jobs, and business growth, helping the Port of Baltimore and the state of Maryland increase its current and future economic activities.
After the draft EIS comment period, the MDTA and FHWA will review all comments received and prepare a combined final EIS and record of decision in November 2026, which will present the selected alternative. Final design procurement activities could begin as early as the fall of 2026, with design potentially starting in spring 2028 and construction potentially starting in summer 2032.
Okay. Thank you for watching the video. As a reminder, the boards shown in the video are displayed here tonight and available on the project website for viewing. Before starting the live testimony portion, we will take a moment to review Title VI and share the ways you can provide comments on the draft EIS and the MDTA RPA. On behalf of the MDTA Title VI officer, I will explain the significance of Title VI and how it relates to the transportation project planning process. The MDTA is committed to incorporating Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 practices during the NEPA planning process, from scoping through the combined final EIS and record of decision for the Tier 2 study. Meaningful participation from individuals and groups historically excluded, overburdened, and underserved is encouraged. The MDTA is ensuring the needs and concerns of individuals and communities are incorporated into the Tier 2 study to establish a fair and equitable transportation decision. Title VI provides that no person on the grounds of race, color, national origin, sex, English proficiency, or disabilities be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity. For more information on Title VI and to take the Title VI survey, visit the study website at baycrossingstudy.com.
There are multiple ways to comment on the draft EIS and the MDTA RPA. You can provide private one-on-one or public oral testimony during this public hearing. You can also complete a comment form online or at one of the in-person hearings, or send an email to info@baycrossingstudy.com. Leave a message at 667-203-5408. Or send a written letter to Bay Crossing Study at 2310 Browning Highway, Baltimore, Maryland, 21224. Details on ways to comment can be found on the project website, baycrossingstudy.com by visiting the Submit Comments page under the Public Engagement tab. Comments must be received before 11:59 p.m. on March 9th, 2026. If you have not done so already, please visit baycrossingstudy.com to sign up for project notifications and view the displays presented at this public hearing. I'll now pass it back to Andrew, who will review the hearing processes.
Thank you, Melissa. Again, the purpose of this public hearing is to allow interested parties to provide public comments on the draft EIS and the MDTA's RPA. My role as the hearing officer is to run a professional and orderly public hearing. I understand how important the issues are related to the draft EIS and the MDTA RPA, and I take my role as hearing officer seriously. I am committed to providing members of the public an opportunity to provide comments in an organized, fair, professional, and orderly manner. Offensive or profane language will not be allowed. I also want to let everyone know that we will not be answering questions or responding to any comments made during the hearing. All comments received, whether at the hearing through oral testimony or through other methods, such as the comment form, email, phone, or mail, will be considered. The MDTA will respond to comments in the combined final EIS and record decision anticipated in November 2026. We are interested in hearing comments from all participants. Please remember that the hearing is being recorded. Please speak directly and clearly into the microphone and provide your full name, address, and any organization that you may be representing. To ensure that everyone is heard, there will be a 3-minute time limit for the public testimony and a 5-minute time limit for any elected officials. And the time will start after you have introduced yourself. When you're providing your testimony, a single tone will sound when there are 30 seconds remaining and a double tone will sound when you have 10 seconds remaining. And at this point, you should wrap up your testimony. I will then remind you at the end of your time, and as the hearing officer, if you're unable to conclude your comments at the end of your time period, I will ask you to wrap up your testimony. As a courtesy, elected officials will be given priority to speak first. Elected officials will then be followed by the attendees who pre-registered to speak, and then attendees who registered this evening. Okay. So we're going to go to our people who signed up. The first 5 people that I have all pre-registered, I'm going to read all their names, and then the first name I called can come up. David Lever, and then it will be James Titus, Robert Wallace, John Corin, and Eric Lashinsky. So David, if you're here, could you come up? So as you come to the microphone, if you could state your name, spell your name, and provide your address and any organization that you may be representing.
My name is David Lever. The last name is L-E, V as in Victor, E-R, 1910 Martins Cove Court, Annapolis, Maryland, 21409, representing myself.
Great.
I'm an architect. I live about 3 miles south of here. I, first of all, want to congratulate the team for the really thorough way that you've moved through the options, the initial 14 options in Tier 1, down to 3 options, and then final options, and now the design considerations that are being discussed tonight. I thoroughly agree with the decision to focus on Corridor 7, agrees with smart growth principles to utilize existing infrastructure. It will support the land uses which are already in place and concentrate them. It's likely to increase density along the corridor. It also, and this is very important, it spares the farmland and natural resources in Kent County, Queen Anne, and Talbot County. And it also spares a number of waterfront communities in Anne Arundel County, my own county. I'm obviously concerned as a resident about the impact. Growth is already accelerating on the Eastern Shore. The change from 5 lanes to 8 lanes, I think, is only going to accelerate that even more so. Beach traffic is already backed up well through Annapolis from Memorial Day to Labor Day. We who live here have all kinds of dodges and detours that we take to get around that. Morning and evening congestion is getting steadily worse in rush hour. Growth is happening on the Eastern Shore. The new study does address public transit, and that is my main concern. Your proposals are very reasonable in the report. I don't think it goes far enough. I don't think it's far-sighted about the growth that is likely to happen as a result of construction of a bridge. I think expanded transit will be a necessity. It should not simply be the way it's presented as a number of rather frankly, weak options now. It should be a main focus of the study. Long-term consideration should be given to bus rapid transit. How that would work, of course, is very technical, perhaps for periods of the day. Also, a reasonable alternative for excursion transit to the beach, for the beach-going traffic, which is the main cause of the backup in the summer months. And how can people get there as an alternative to the car? I do hope that the pedestrian and bicycle shared use path will be installed. I think it would be magnificent. And as a representation, if you're familiar with the bridge across the Hudson in New York State and how popular that is, I think the views and the attraction would be terrific. I also believe this will be the icon for Maryland. I think it will displace the blue crab, in fact, as the Maryland icon. And so design considerations, I think, are paramount. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. You don't have to applaud for me. That's okay. All right. Oh, you're good. Sorry. The next will be James Titus. After that will be Robert Wallace.
Hello, I'm Jim Titus, 6718 Glendale Road in Glendale, Maryland, Washington area road skaters.
And if you could just spell your name for the record.
Oh, Titus.
And I did want to point out one thing. You will see that there is a clock in the bottom right corner, so you can kind of track your time there.
Very good. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
For an option for a $1.3 billion project, the analysis of the trail is not adequate. The EIS says a lot about the incremental cost effectiveness of adding travel lanes, but for the trail, it's all or nothing without looking at any low-cost incremental options. And it only looks at the costs. It needs to quantify the benefits. We know that this similar Hudson River Trail gets 120,000 visitors per year. How much is that worth? You simply assume that no auto trips will be avoided with a trail facility rather than calculating how many people will bike to work over the bridge if, for example, the mode share in Anne Arundel and Queen Anne County were to apply. Let alone how many more people will be using this trail as e-bikes have market penetration and the gridlock on US 50 becomes slower than the e-bike speed of 25 miles an hour. How can you know if the trail is worth $1.3 billion without quantifying what we get? And if you're not sure that it's worth $1.3 billion, why haven't you evaluated the $65 million trail option? You can afford that. Consider the 4-mile Richmond-San Rafael Bridge across San Francisco Bay. It has a trail behind a Jersey barrier most of the time, along its 14-foot shoulder, but when there's high traffic, a pair of zipper machines move the Jersey barrier 10 feet to the right, restoring a travel lane that people drive cars in. You could do that the same and have a clear shoulder on Sunday afternoon or whenever you really need 5 lanes going east. It cost them $25 million, but, maybe it would cost a little bit more in Maryland. So for the sake of argument, let's say $65 million. By the way, that's what the ICC trail costs the state, and it has far less use than a trail over the bridge would have. Maybe bikeways would fund some of these incremental costs. The environmental footprint would be less. Now, does it make sense to build a trail that only costs 5% as much but doesn't give you as much service? I don't know. Nobody knows because it wasn't analyzed. And for that reason, you need to have a supplemental analysis in the EIS.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next up will be Robert Wallace and then John Corin. Mr. Wallace, if you could state your name and spell your name and your address and if you're representing an organization.
Yep. Good evening. My name's Robert Wallace, Wallace, Wallace. I live at 884 Mallard Circle in Arnold, Maryland. So I live on the peninsula here, and I'm here to strongly urge, just like the last two, is to make sure that the shared use path is no longer optional, but a base part of the project. Two items that were brought up as far as determination as to why it might be optional, and those were basically financial and environmental. And I believe that on the financial end of things, that this we are spending far more to actually just exceed the shoulder requirement for this project. if you actually look at this project, when we call it 8 lanes for it, there's 4 shoulder lanes, and that's actually beyond the standard for the highway requirements for that. So if financially this is actually a challenge to get the optional shared use bike path to be part of the base thing, all we have to do is follow the standards for our own state and actually have that for the shoulders, and that would be able to financially cover this trail for it. And as other people have identified, I don't think the environmental impact really identifies all of the pluses as to what is required or what would be benefit from this trail. The number of cars that would not be utilized. And as someone who lives on the peninsula, it's also quality of life, right? We are unfortunately tremendously negatively impacted by this bridge for it. And as a result, this trail will actually be an added to the quality of life of this local area here for it. I literally can bike to the Bay Bridge faster than I can drive on many days for it. And the fact that this shared use path is not a base requirement, I think is short-sighted for that. So the last thing I'll say is that I truly think it'll turn into a tourist destination, meaning it'll be a big asset to the state. And by adding in this shared use path, I think can really add to the quality of life to the area. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next up will be John Corin, and after John will be Eric Lashinsky. Again, if you could state your name, spell your name, provide your address, and any organization that
Thank you. I think we're seeing a trend here, aren't we? My name is John Corin. I live at 125 Hillcrest Lane, Severna Park, Maryland. I am president of Bicycle Advocates for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County.
And just spell your last name, please.
Sorry, Korin. President of Bicycle Advocates for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. I chair the Anne Arundel County Bicycle Advisory Commission, and I co-led the coalition of 56 organizations that sent a letter in to MDTA last June weighing in favor of the shared use path. So I'm going to try to get through 10 reasons why the shared use path should be mandatory, not optional. First of all, what is more fundamental to the identity of the state of Maryland than our beloved Chesapeake Bay, the largest estuary in the United States? And the bridge is part of that. We get a once in a multi-generational opportunity to provide trail crossings like this. We can't let it go. We can't let happen what happened with the Nice Bridge happen with this bridge. It's a critical gap in the statewide trail network. There's a recently published Maryland Transportation Trails network that identifies this as a gap. We have the existing Broadneck Trail on this side of the shore, which connects to the Anne Arundel Trail Network, which connects to the Capitol Trails Coalition Network, which connects to the Baltimore Greenway Network. And we now have on the eastern shore the Cross Island Trail, which is part of the newly formed Maryland Eastern Shore Trail Network. We cannot let this opportunity to close the trail gap go. That's 2. 3, redundancy and resiliency. This lane could possibly be used as an emergency lane or a maintenance lane. Good building, Maryland Complete Streets policy says we've got to include facilities like this. 4th, equitable access to the Chesapeake Bay. Any environmentalist will tell you nothing gets people caring more about the Bay than giving them a personal experience with this. This shared use path will do this. It's a big tourism opportunity. We heard that from the previous speaker. It's a safe option. It's protected. It aligns with the climate, health, and mode shift goals of the state of Maryland. Costs way less to build it in than to try to retrofit it on. It matches best practices for mega bridges, as we've heard about others. Locally, we've got the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, the Frederick Douglass Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge has one, the George Washington Bridge, even the Pensacola Bay Bridge, which is a low-density area, but a very long bridge, separated shared use path. And Finally, this will help build public support for the bridge itself because it'll just put more people in touch and deliver more public value, as you've seen now by 4 speakers in a row, on top of the 7 or 8 last night. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up will be Eric Lashinsky. Again, as you've heard, if you could state your name, then spell your name and provide your address, and if you're representing an organization.
Good evening, Eric Lashinsky, Leshinsky, first name ERIC, 405 Fairhill Court, Annapolis, Maryland, 21403. I'm here in my capacity as Chief of Comprehensive Planning for the City of Annapolis. In my work for the city, I do plans, policies, projects aimed at making the city a more resilient, healthy, equitable place and in a region. And when I talk to community members, the most straightforward way they can envision that is a place, a home, a region that is safer for pedestrians and cyclists. We completed a comprehensive plan, 10-year comprehensive plan just a couple of years ago that was unanimously adopted by our city council in 2024 that included content related to the Bay Crossing, advocating for an alternative where the shared use path for bikes and pedestrians is not optional, and advocating for dedicated transit lanes. We've been planning our region for the last 60 or so years primarily for one mode of transportation, the personal automobile. Increasingly, people are looking for a different future that's more multimodal, that's more connected, that provides options. I've been fortunate to experience a lot of the precedents that have been shared in this Bay Crossing study for the shared use path, the Cuomo Bridge, the San Francisco Bay Bridge. Although I'm a native Annapolitan, the precedent that comes to my mind, it's not quite comparable in terms of design, but the MOPAC mobility bridges in Austin, Texas, where I lived for several years and worked, that was in several planning studies leading up to its construction, similar to this shared use path on Bay Crossing study that has been in numerous planning documents that have been adopted. What made that MOPAC mobility bridges in Austin so transformative was it was a critical link to get people to work from communities south of Austin to downtown. I believe this shared use path on the Bay Crossing would have a similar effect. I want to commend MDTA for a comprehensive process and looking at all of the costs and benefits of this project, but I do want to make sure that you're looking at all of the benefits of a shared use path. I think it could be transformative. And to be totally candid, I think to not do that would be the greatest missed opportunity in my planning career. And it would be hard to defend that decision to my daughter, who's 10 years old and an avid cyclist. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so those were our pre-registered speakers. We do have 3 other individuals who did sign up tonight. And just as a reminder to anyone in the auditorium who is sort of been thinking about whether they want to make a comment or not, if you would like to make a comment, all you have to do is just go out to the sign-up table, give them your name. They'll provide that to me, and I'll announce you. So, but right now we have 3 more speakers: Dale Wittig, Francis Seaman Sr., and Mike Binnick. So we'll call up Dale first. As you've heard, if you could state your name, spell your name, address, and any organization you may be representing.
Okay. Yes, my name is Dale Wittig. It's spelled Wittig. My address is 2036 Chesapeake Road, Annapolis, Maryland. If you're not familiar with Chesapeake Road, it is out near Sandy Point State Park. So I am deeply affected by all this activity. And I would like to say, first of all, that I'm very, very happy that you are fostering option C, which is to build to the south, because a very, very strong concern when we started talking about this was that any build to the north would adversely impact Sandy Point State Park, which is one of the few, if only, public access points to the bay for some probably 1 million people. People come all the way from Virginia to that park in order to be able to access the bay. And the boat ramp launch access there is right north of the existing roadway. So any construction on the north side would definitely have an adverse impact on the utility of the park. So I'm happy to see that we're talking about building to the south, and I would encourage that continue. The only other thing, and this is, I'm sorry to contradict some of the previous speakers. Personally, I really do not think the shared use path on the bridge at that price is really worth it. There is currently a paved path all the way out to Sandy Point State Park. They finished that this past summer, and on any given nice sunny day, you can go out there and count 10 people riding their bikes down that path in a whole day on a nice sunny Saturday day. Now, given that over the next few years, more people might know about it and it would use, but given that the paths, the trail system coming down College Parkway and all the way out to the Sandy Point State Park, the usage has really, really been surprisingly minimal. So now I'm happy that it's there, because having people ride their bikes on College Parkway was always bad because there's no shoulder there and it's dangerous. So having the park, right now you can ride your bike all the way to Sandy Point State Park, all the way to essentially to the beach, because you can get inside the park. But to extend it over the bay, I don't think that many people are going to do that. And if you do that, you're definitely going to need to provide some kind of parking and access to tie it in so you can park a car, because most people aren't necessarily going to ride their bike all the way to get to the end of the bridge. So you're going to need parking and access at both ends for people to get on and off the path and then put their car in a truck or whatever and get home. So thank you very much for your efforts, and I do appreciate that, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up is Francis Seaman Sr. Again, state your name, spell your name, provide your address, and any organization you may be representing.
Good evening. My name is Francis, Francis, middle initial M, Seman, Senior. I am representing the public in my own belief of how things should be and should be accomplished for the condition that it is to take place.
And your address, please.
1315 Willow Road, Dundalk, Maryland, 21222.
Great, go ahead.
I hope I can do this right. In January of 2025, I went to a meeting for the crossing over of the Key Bridge characteristics that got demolished by the ship. I went to the meeting and informed them that they should make a bridge as a two-tier bridge. Cables go to the middle on each side of each pillar, have a construction company there to build the bridge. Two different companies. They could have had it built in 2 years. Now they want to change that to a different location, raise the bridge higher, and the traffic is backed up many miles every day, every morning for the next number of years until they get the bridge done. For the new bridge that is to be proposed, I disagree with the condition that it is, and raising the bridge, both sections on the Patapsco River and the Chesapeake Bay. How many ships will be coming up the coastline just to accommodate them? It would be cheaper for them to put a terminal below the Bay Bridge for the large ships and let the smaller ships come upstream. The new proposal I have been for many years built a new bridge from 695 in Edgemere, Maryland, through North Point State Park to Tolchester on pillars. Will not affect the local traffic. The time saved will be at least 45 minutes, thereabouts. And when there's backups on the bridge, it will be less time for them to go over, for the people to go the same direction as going down 50 and cross the Bay Bridge. The existing bridges now, you have the speed limit too low. It's 40 miles an hour. It should go to 55 to eliminate the backups of traffic. There was no problem with the toll booths. It was always the speed limit going over the bridge. Put gates on the south side, on the side road that goes along 50. No more cheaters. And put toll booths on the bridges at the Chesapeake Bay so that they can not have bills come and pay the fee as you go along and pay accordingly.
Okay, you need to wrap up.
And you could put on the bridge a walkway and a bike lane on the existing bridge outside of the traffic lane. It wouldn't be any problem. It's cost effective. It's not that much of a problem.
Okay.
Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you for your comments.
And that concluded what I had.
Great.
I hope.
Okay. Well, as a reminder to everyone in here, if you have additional comments, and again, I'll call up Mike Binnix now, but you can always submit a comment form, which are located in the cafeteria. But is Mr. Binnix here? Yep, come on up. Again, as you've heard, your name, spell your name, your address, and any organization you may be representing.
Sure. My name is Mike Binnix, B as in boy, I-N-N-I-X as in X-ray. I live in Severna Park. I provided my full address when I registered. I'm a member of Bike AAA. Our president, John, just spoke, and several other local bike clubs. I'm not here officially speaking on their behalf. But as you might have guessed, I'm here to speak in support of the shared use path. And I just want to repeat a couple of points that some of my predecessors advocating for the same thing have already made. We've got a once in every 2 generations opportunity here, right? This thing's going to have a lifespan of 60, 70 years if the predecessor is an example. If we don't get it right now, we missed the chance. The shared use path on the Woodward-Wilson Bridge has been wildly popular. I've ridden over that on days where I had to get off and walk because I was sharing it with too many people to ride safely. It was congested. It's a wonderful facility, and I think it serves as a great example, in addition to the others that have already been mentioned, the Tappan Zee, the Golden Gate, and some of the other bridges around the country that use this to do it. We have got to change a culture that impoverishes our kids going into debt early in life because they got to buy cars to succeed professionally and socially. We've got to begin educating ourselves to change our love of cars. It's a 100-year experiment that is killing us, literally. We've got to get off of that and start enabling other modes of transportation. The support you've built into this plan for public transportation is an excellent idea. I think the EIS is a little short on some of the details of how that'll be implemented. It needs to be expanded. And the SUP needs every bit as much emphasis on its value as it does on its costs. Finally, the costs strike me as overly estimated. I'm not a construction engineer or a civil engineer, but $1.2 billion for an extra 12 to 14 feet of pavement strikes me as excessive. Somebody mentioned that the shoulders already exceed the necessary safety standards, and perhaps we can shave a few feet and some dollars there to trade off to get this SUP included. Thank you for your time and for the effort to bring this about. As a lifetime Maryland resident, the congestion has been a frustration that we all share, and we're looking forward to seeing a solution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's all the people who have signed up to provide testimony. So again, if anyone here has decided that they would like to provide comments, well, really what I could do right now, since I have no one else in line, if there is anyone, you can raise your hand and come up to speak right now. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone who is interested in doing that. So what we're going to do, this hearing will continue until 8 o'clock tonight. It's 6:55 right now. So we're going to go into a recess, and if someone comes who wants to provide testimony, we will reconvene, hear that testimony, and then go back into recess after that. But again, the open house still goes on until 8 o'clock as well, so you can go in there and review all the information and talk to project team members. And if anyone decides they want to provide testimony, we will be here ready to accept that. So right now it's 6:56 p.m. and we are in recess.
15 miles an hour. Great.
It's freezing in here. We need a little space heater.
Okay, we're going to come back from recess right now. Right now it is 7:06 p.m., and we do have someone who has signed up indicating they want to provide comments. So I'm going to call that person up, Mary Pierce. Mary, as you come up, I just want to remind you you'll have 3 minutes. It'll be on the screen there. And if you could state your name, spell your name, your address, and any organization you may be representing.
Sure. My name is Mary Pierce, last name Pearce. Mary's just Mary. I'm just representing myself. And I live at 12 Baldridge Road in Annapolis. I've been there for 6 months now, more or less. I just moved back from Seattle. And I just have to say, listening to the last few folks kind of perked me up as far as having more of an eye to the future. I love everything you guys have done here. I think this is a wonderful presentation and a wonderful opportunity to give some input. I would put forward, I know a lot of other bridges have been mentioned, and I've been listening for the Seattle area because I've lived in Seattle for 20 years. I moved from Cape St. Clair out there and worked in the city, lived on the east side. I don't know if you're familiar with Seattle, but Lake Washington is a very deep lake that divides basically the two parts of the city. Seattle wouldn't admit that Bellevue's part of Seattle, but kind of is. So I don't know if they're just finishing, I know they're testing a new light rail coming across Lake Washington on a floating bridge. They're light years ahead. The ease of commute out there was so fabulous. And I know you guys are working with a lot of other agencies, maybe have limited purview on some of the regional transportation options. But if we can think about getting away from the reliance on cars, I just want to back up that statement that some other folks have made and also throw my head into the ring on making the SUP a required part of this project. I was frequently passed by bicycles going back and forth across the same I-90 bridge that has been there. It was there the whole time I was in Seattle. I think I moved out in 2007. And the bikers were constantly going back and forth across the bridge on that path, and we just took it for granted. It was just the way things were there. And I think it's a real lack of, moving forward here that, we haven't put in more of these lanes and paths. And now that we're able to connect them, I think it's a real opportunity too. So that was basically all I had. I know I'm kind of reinforcing some other speakers, but, again, I think that Seattle area is a real good example if there's any opportunity to look. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And again, if anyone else would like to make comments, you can sign up to do that. Right now, we don't have anyone who has indicated that, so we are going to go back into recess. It's 7:09. The hearing will remain open until 8 o'clock, and the open house portion will remain open until 8 o'clock as well. But right now, it is 7:09 p.m., and we are back in recess. Okay, it is 8:00 p.m., and this concludes this public hearing session. The next and final public hearing testimony session will take place on Thursday, February 12th at Kent Island High School in Stevensville from 5 to 8 p.m. As a reminder, the public comment period will remain open until March 9th, 2026. Please visit baycrossingstudy.com to submit your comments. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you regarding the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study Tier 2 NEPA.